All right, everyone, welcome. Hello, we're imbalanced here. Left-right thing. I'm John Goldberg, I'm the Dean of the Law School, and I am truly delighted to have this occasion to celebrate our wonderful colleague and friend, Professor Sheila Heen, on her appointment as the Thaddeus R. Beal Professor of Practice. I will be brief because, well, who isn't excited about the prospect of another damn learning opportunity? For starters, I want to acknowledge all the colleagues, students, and friends who are here with us today. Thank you all for being here. And I also want to recognize those of Professor Heen's family members who are in attendance. Her husband, John Richardson, class of '92. Their sons, Peter and Ben Richardson, Ben, class of '24. Ben's wife, Darcy. Sheila's sisters, Jill Grennan and Stacy Lennon, and Stacy's husband, Dan. Sheila's mother-in-law, Susan Richardson, and her brother and sister-in-law, Jim Richardson and Susan Lynch. It's great to have you all here. Let me say a few words about the Thaddeus R. Beal Professorship. It was established in 1942 by a bequest from Thaddeus Beal and an additional gift from the Beal family. The chair aims to, quote, support the development and promotion of professional competence in negotiation, mediation, and other non-litigious methods of resolving disputes. Come on. Thaddeus Beal was born in New York City and earned his law degree from Harvard in 1942. He then served for 5 years in the United States Navy during World War II, reaching the rank of lieutenant commander. His legal career began as an associate and later partner at the Boston law firm Herrick, Smith, Donald, Farley, and Ketchum. He then served as president and CEO of the Harvard Trust Company before being appointed Undersecretary of the Army in 1969. As Undersecretary, Beal was the second-ranking civilian official in the Department of the Army at the height of the Vietnam War. According to the Department of Defense, he played a key role in facilitating the phased withdrawal of U.S. combat troops. I think you can all agree that in light of Thaddeus Beal's work, which surely required real deftness in handling conflict, as well as the aspirations for the chair that has been established in his name, it is entirely fitting that it be occupied by a world-renowned expert on negotiation and conflict resolution, our own Professor Sheila Heen. A graduate of Occidental College and a 1993 alumna of this school, Professor Heen is the deputy director of the Harvard Negotiation Project. For more than 3 decades now, she has made an indelible contribution to the study and development of negotiation strategy. She has also played a leading role in the establishment of some of our most innovative executive education programs, including the Harvard Negotiation Institute's Advanced Negotiation course and the program on Negotiations Master Class. Beyond academia, Sheila is a founder of Triad Consulting Group, a corporate education and consulting firm that serves clients on 6 continents that range from Pixar to the NBA to the Federal Reserve. What do those have in common other than Sheila? Sheila excels at working with individuals and executive teams under pressure. Her guidance focuses on de-escalating conflict, repairing relationships, and sound decision-making. In the public sector, she has provided training for the New England Organ Bank, the Singapore Supreme Court, the Obama White House, and even theologians struggling with disagreements over God. She also is co-author of 2 international bestsellers, Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most, which she wrote with Douglas Stone and Bruce Patton, first in 2010, and Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well, even when it is off-base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood, which she co-wrote with Douglas Stone in 2014. I am delighted to acknowledge Douglas and Bruce, themselves HLS graduates, who are both here with us today. On a more personal note, I had the privilege of working closely with Professor Heen to develop materials for the Difficult Conversations component of our 1L orientation program. It was for me, and I hope for her, a wonderfully collaborative experience. It also left me more appreciative than ever of Sheila's thoughtfulness about and commitment to education. It takes a lot to be a great lawyer, author, and businesswoman. Takes even more to be, on top of all those things, a great teacher. One has to have that special spidey sense for how to reach new cohorts of students where they are and how to guide them with a touch that is neither too heavy nor too light. This is truly a delicate task that requires acuity, empathy, wisdom, judgment, and more than a little of a sense of humor. Professor Heen has all of these in spades. I am beyond grateful to have as a colleague a lawyer, scholar, and educator who is reshaping how we approach conflict resolution. Because in the actual practice of law, the ability to negotiate well is, wait for it, non-negotiable. As they become experts in their own right, not just in the law, but in the practice of law, Harvard Law School students could ask for no better guide and mentor. And so, without further ado, I give you the Thaddeus R. Beal Professor of Practice, Sheila Heen.
So how many of you have never been to a chair talk before? Great, me either. So we are in this together. Luckily, I put on my to-do list a couple months ago, figure out how to do a chair talk. So I called Catherine Cronin, and she gave me the rundown, at least on our format, which starts with thank yous, then a few thoughts, and from my point of view, hopefully thoughts that are useful to you, so that this is worth your time. And then be sure to end on time. Now she actually repeated that last part 3 times. So that was clearly the most important part, and we are going to be in it together. So let's start by thanking all of you. This is an incredibly busy set of lives that we lead and an incredibly busy time in the semester to take the time to be here and to mark this moment just being present in it with me and hopefully with each other. Because just appreciating the people that we get to walk alongside in this journey of life and our life's work is an incredible privilege, and this community is an incredible privilege to be part of. So just take a look around and appreciate that for a moment. You can also glare at the people you're not happy to if you like. And it's, I don't know, it's particularly important, it feels, to appreciate that when it feels like there's so much wrong in the world. The biggest thank yous actually go to 2 people who are not here tonight, my parents, Jack and Joyce Heen. Many of you know that we lost both of them this past year. My dad was a corporate lawyer, the consummate negotiator. He never truly retired, and he practiced law with a joy and commitment that meant that he often did his work for free for the people in his community who needed it. A year ago during spring break, I went home. Can you guys hear me, by the way? Yeah, okay. I went home to help him shut down his law office after 60 years of practice. And clients from decades earlier showed up to help. I can only hope that we use our own training and talents to help people in our communities who need our help, just as he did. Cleaning out our childhood home recently has been bittersweet. It's also yielded a few treasures, including copies of notes from an official meeting between school officials during my 3rd grade year and my mother, which reads in part, quote, Mrs. Heen expressed surprise that Sheila had advanced intellectual capabilities. It also turned up one of the many persuasive essays that we were required to write when being punished, where Mom invited us to reflect on what we should be learning in this moment, as well as to advise and advocate whether and how we should be punished. In this one, I argued that my sisters, Jill and Stacy, were each much worse than I was. And boy, just wait until Stacy is a teenager if you think I'm bad. Not only was this poor negotiation strategy, but it also turned out I was wrong on the facts, since Stacy turned out to be way better than either Jill or me as a teenager. Stacy, by the way, also teaches negotiation at Tufts. When we would bicker, Mom would say, "Your sisters are your sisters for life." And we would roll our eyes, but of course, like everything, she turned out to be right. My sisters Jill and Stacy are here tonight, and I could not be more grateful to be walking through this life together. So I was committed to Stanford Law when I got my Harvard acceptance. I also did not get into Yale. How many of you also did not get into Yale? Yeah, totally. Okay. And are we totally happy that we're here? Yes, absolutely. Anyway, I was ready to go to Stanford, and one of my college advisors, Professor Bob Janicek, said to me, "You know, Harvard has this negotiation thing, and I just have a feeling it might be your jam." And I will be forever grateful for that advice. And particularly so, I wanted that to be public because Professor Janicek died while I was in law school at age 45 from AIDS, just a couple of years before treatments became much more effective. But he changed the course of my life, and I will forever be grateful for that. So I turned up at HLS in 1990 and immediately took negotiation. During the spring of my 1L year, from Roger Fisher and Bruce Patton and Doug Stone. And I just immediately fell in love with the analytical rigor and the emotional insight and the cross-disciplinary nature of this rapidly evolving field. And I thought I could learn something new every day of my life. And status check, so far so good, for sure. But it's worth pausing to note one day in particular, December 30th of 1991, I was a 2L. I turned up to serve as a teaching assistant in the negotiation workshop, and I met two people that day who would play the biggest roles in the last 35, 36 years, however long it's been, of my life, John Richardson and Doug Stone. So John Richardson, I fell in love with. He was a 3L at the time, pretty much instantly. Although I feel I should get credit for keeping that thought to myself for 13 whole days before telling him. We've now been married for 31 years, and he also teaches negotiation at MIT Sloan with some of you. We have three amazing kids, Ben and Pete here tonight, and Addie at college in California. And Ben has already demonstrated the good taste of choosing an amazing wife, Darcy Bowen, and I am currently learning how to become a mother-in-law. I luckily have an incredible example, and if I can become half as good a mother-in-law as my mother-in-law, Susan Richardson, Darcy, we will be good. Doug Stone became my closest friend and collaborator. We've written 2 books together. We also founded and ran Triad Consulting with our partner, Debbie Goldstein, the amazing Debbie. And these are 2 people to whom I trust my life, and we're walking through trusting each other with our lives, which is just an incredible privilege. When we met, Bruce Patton was the Thaddeus R. Beal. And I think probably my favorite thing about my office now is that it used to be Bruce's office. And Bruce, you have created incredibly big shoes for me to fill. Bob Mnookin first put forward my appointment as a lecturer on law in 1995. And we've now had the privilege of teaching together for more than 30 years. I'm still a little bit in denial about your retirement, Bob. But I also just appreciate that you put up with me, especially in those early years. And finally, let me just share, this is the community professionally around the negotiation workshop of all of the people that I get to work alongside and learn from every day. I can spend the rest of the evening talking about each of them, but that is not what we came here for. So suffice to say, these folks, we are incredibly lucky to have, I'm incredibly lucky to have them working, collaborating to teach the negotiation courses, and the students are incredibly lucky to do. Let me, though, maybe pause to say something even more honest. Well, I stand here and say I'm incredibly grateful for all I've learned from these people looking back. At the time, I did not feel quite so excited about what they were teaching. And what's interesting to me about learning is that it's mostly appreciated, in many cases, in hindsight. And that at the time, it's actually incredibly hard. How many of you are 1Ls now? A few. How many of you have been 1Ls at some time? Okay. So the 1L year is full of learning, to be sure. It's also full of pain. Confusion and anxiety and fear and frustration and embarrassment and pride, right? And I think that question of why is learning so hard when looking back we're so grateful for it is one of the things that Doug and I a few years ago got curious about. And so before I go further, I should probably just define what we mean by learning and particularly feedback as a engine for learning. Because feedback, people usually think of formal feedback like performance reviews and grades or a verdict from the judge, or you make partner or you don't, or feedback can also be a marriage proposal and its acceptance. Like that is feedback in both directions, I would say. But I really mean all kinds of feedback that other people have for the ways in which you are impacting them, for what they see that you are missing, for instance. And so it can be formal, but it's more often informal. It can be direct, but it's often indirect. Spoken or, in some cases, unspoken. Like the fact that you haven't gotten an answer to that email that you sent. Is that feedback, or are they just busy? And even if they are busy, well, why am I not still a higher priority for them to respond to me? And so part of what's hard about learning and feedback is trying to figure out is this feedback and what am I supposed to learn exactly along the way? Now, I think one of the things that is particularly a conundrum is that feedback really sits at the junction of a couple. Every time I look away, does it blink? Of a couple of coordinates. And I think this is just the way we're wired as humans. On the one hand, we actually do want to learn and grow and have their clicker work. But we also want to be accepted and respected and loved the way we are now. So we do want to learn and grow. If you look at the happiness research, learning new things, achieving mastery, improving your score, these are all a big piece of what makes life satisfying. But it's also true that the fact of feedback can suggest that how I am now is not totally okay with the people around me and that they want me to learn something new. They just want a few upgrades to my performance or my knowledge or my personality. And so I think this helps me understand why I feel ambivalent about feedback. And why it's a double-edged sword. And maybe this is operating in spades in my first year of law school, where there's a steep learning curve, but we're also trying to look like we belong here, and that we're not imposters somehow. One thing that has helped me over the years is to break down and see feedback as 3 different types. Each of them has different purposes. And those of you who have been through the negotiation workshop and who watched the video on this, know, or perhaps remember this, that you can think of feedback as really 3 different kinds with 3 different purposes. The easy way to remember them is ACE, and I did not make this up, by the way. It comes from Getting It Done, which was written by Roger Fisher and Alan Sharp and my husband, John Richardson. Since he's in the room, I better call that out. So appreciation is just saying, like, I see you, I get you, you matter, I see how hard you're working, I see that you're actually making progress. It's still not very good, but it's better than it was yesterday. right? And this keeps us motivated, it keeps us engaged, it keeps us trying. The second, coaching is anything designed to help you get better, to improve your knowledge, your skill, your capability, your effectiveness, the impact that you can have. So this is a big engine for learning, but then it bumps into the E, which is evaluation. Evaluation tells you how you're doing, whether you're on track, whether you measure up. And I think evaluation is the one that we have the biggest reaction to, feeling judged. And so it can drown out our ability to hear the other two. And also, if we actually need all three in order to learn and grow, which I'm going to suggest that we do, figuring out what do I need right now is actually not something your giver knows. It's something only you can figure out. And so I have learned when people send me a piece of writing and they say, hey, can you take a look at this and give me some feedback? I've learned to ask, in many cases, what kind of feedback would be helpful to you? Sometimes what people need is just, hey, I really like this and this, keep going. This is a decent idea, run with it. And they just need that appreciation or spotlighting. Other times they really need coaching. I cannot figure out the organization here. Can you suggest how to reorganize this, for instance? And then eventually, maybe they need evaluation. Do you think this is ready to go out? Should I send it to Sasha and Keith because it's actually good enough that we can include it in the compendium of essays? So I think part of what this helps us do is really change the way that we explicitly organize teaching in the workshop, inviting people, given how hard we work in the negotiation courses, to have lots of appreciation and give each other lots of appreciation as well for, boy, how hard we're working, and actually you were really good at that. And you're better than you were last time we negotiated, in fact, to really see each other. And then to have lots of opportunities for coaching to drive the learning and to play down the evaluation part for now, just to give us space. Because I actually think, my hypothesis, you guys can decide, this population might have the hardest time with this. Because people who are high achievers and driven can be hardest on themselves. We hold ourselves to incredibly high standards, and sometimes the most painful feedback we have for ourselves, or the most painful feedback is feedback we have for ourselves, rather than feedback coming from anyone else. Now, I also want to be clear that getting good at learning and feedback does not require you to always take the feedback. So just take a moment and think of a piece of advice you've gotten in the last year or so from someone, anyone in your life, that you did not take, you rejected. And just turn to someone near you. I want to know, you can tell them if you want what it was, but what I really am interested in is why did you turn it down? Why did you reject it? Just take 1 minute, share with someone else.
Okay. So I will reluctantly interrupt. I just learned, embarrassingly, that my mic was not on. So there you go. We had real-time learning. A little bit painful. So talk to me. Let's collect a few reasons. Why did you reject the feedback? There are lots of good reasons to do so. Who wants to start? Yeah.
I thought the person giving me feedback didn't have the complete picture of my life.
Totally. The person giving the feedback just didn't have the whole picture, and in particular, what you needed, maybe, in that, and more of the context, it sounds like also. Yeah? Yeah. Heather.
It wasn't physically possible to enact it.
That's great advice. It's impossible, but thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in the back.
I have a gut feeling that I wanted to hear something different.
Oh, I had a gut feeling, is that what you said? That this is not what I need right now. Whatever this is, it is not what I was hoping for. Nice. John.
It didn't fit my personality, my values, virtues.
Yeah, this is great for you, but it's not who I am, and by the way, I don't want to be like you. Yeah, totally. What else? Yeah.
I
exactly. Thanks for the coaching and evaluation. What I actually needed was appreciation. Yeah, totally. Nice. Anything else? Other reasons? Yeah, Evan.
Didn't match my risk profile.
Ah, it didn't match your risk profile. Say more.
So like maybe I'm less risk averse than this person and they're giving me advice that is based on how risk averse they are.
Like to play it safe. And you're thinking, oh, okay, but I actually feel okay taking a little bit more risk. Great, Charlie.
My opinion about the issue was quite strong, and the reasons were I'm not sure where it fell and what you
Yeah.
that their feedback was not persuasive enough to have any impact on my opinion.
Right. That's sort of interesting, but not very compelling. Yeah, totally. Disagreement, yeah, totally. Great, so by the way, all of these are fabulous reasons to reject feedback. Maybe. The problem is that we typically decide a little too fast. That when feedback is incoming, I don't know about you, but I'm scanning it for what's wrong with it, right? Who gave it to me, why I suspect they gave it to me. I don't want to be like them. I don't think they know what they're talking about. They don't really know my whole life. What they're suggesting is impossible. How they gave it is pathetic, totally impossible and unpersuasive to understand. And so if I can figure out what's wrong with it, well, then I can safely set it aside and relax and go on with my life. So I'm incredibly good at wrong spotting. How many of you are also good at wrong spotting? The smarter you are, the better you are at it. Now, how many of you are good at it? Yeah. Like I can make spreadsheets of what's wrong with people's feedback. Yeah. So the problem here is that we are always going to be able to find something wrong with the feedback that we get. In fact, it could be 90% wrong. And that last 10% might be something worth thinking about. Might be something like, you don't really understand the whole thing. It's not what I think I wanted to hear. I'm not sure it's going to work, or it might be impossible. However, maybe this is a bigger issue than I thought it was. So I'll figure out my own solution. But that's the 10% to listen for. And so the question of, hey, maybe receiving feedback is a totally independent suite of skills that if we can better understand it and get good at it, you can actually take charge of and drive your own learning. And you don't have to wait around for the perfect mentor to show up, because you will find them, but they are few and far between. And with the exception of the people who are here tonight, my life is full of people who are terrible at giving it. Not the people who are here, of course. No. But I can either upgrade my friends and family, or I can learn how to learn from whatever I get. And that's not simple, because as humans, what we found is we listened to the reasons people react to feedback. We started to see that actually as humans, we have three kinds of triggered reactions. The first is what we call a truth trigger. So this is really assessing the quality of the feedback itself. Like, is it possible to do? Is it good or bad advice? Does it really understand the whole situation? Would it work? Is it aligned with my risk profile, so it's something I would want to take? So this is all about assessing the substance. The second, you guys hit on all of these, has to do with relationship triggers. Who it came from. Do I like them? Do I trust them? Do I think they know what they're talking about? Do I have suspicions about their own agendas for why they might be giving me this feedback, which is maybe good for them but not necessarily for me? We can have a bigger reaction to the who than the what sometimes. This is why your best friend can tell you things that nobody else can. It's also why sometimes the people closest to us can't give us feedback. When John has feedback for me, I don't even code it as feedback. I just code it as John being annoying. So, the last is identity triggers. Identity triggers are sort of two pieces. One is, what's the story we tell about who we are in the world, and in what way is that in conflict with this feedback? If I think of myself as someone who treats people fairly, then a suggestion that maybe I'm not being fair here and maybe I'm overlooking something is actually quite
upsetting. The other part of identity triggers has to do with the way that we're wired, because we stumbled upon some evidence that suggests that as individuals, individual sensitivity to feedback can vary by up to 3,000%. Now we're all in the HLS community together, giving each other feedback and trying to learn together, with some people who are at one end of the spectrum in terms of sensitivity and time to recover, and others who are insensitive to feedback, or I should probably say undersensitive to feedback. But you don't care what I call you, so I can say whatever I want. Now, I want to be clear that these triggered reactions don't go away. I still have them every day. So the trick is not to let the triggered reaction and the pain of receiving the feedback or the suggestion indirectly that maybe there's something that you need to learn, be the end of the story. Instead, to make it be the start of the story to sort for what might be legitimate about this. And so there's a suite of skills in each of these. To deal with truth triggers, skills around the challenge to see what in the world the giver's trying to tell you, and also to see yourself clearly. Because we all have blind spots. I don't, actually, but I know you guys do. And so we actually need each other to see ourselves and see the impact that we're having on others, particularly maybe as lawyers, where what we're doing is trying to persuade other people. And when you're trying to persuade other people, the only people who can tell you if you're being persuasive to them is the other person. And so we actually need each other in order to learn and grow, and we need some honest, if painful sometimes, feedback from them. The second set of skills is around the challenge of we. How do I separate the who from the what so that I can hear the what on its merits and not let it be thrown out because of my issues with the who sometimes. Because irritatingly, people we don't like and don't respect and don't want to be like sometimes actually are correct and have good advice, which is really annoying. But if I miss it just because I'm rejecting it because of the giver, I'm missing a huge opportunity, and sometimes those people can be the MVPs of your learning. Because the people you like and work easily with do not see your edges. You have an easy complementarity style. The people you have some friction with, where you struggle to work together, do see your edges. They bring them out. It's their fault, just to be clear. However, it's your edges, right? And so it's actually the people that we struggle with who sometimes can be the most valuable players in our learning. And figuring out how do I learn from this person and also make the friction a little bit less so that we both change and learn something along the way is part of the challenge of we. And then finally, the last is the challenge of being me. How do I understand my own profile and help other people know how to give me feedback so that I can hear it and actually understand it and take it and just make this a little bit easier. One of the things, I'll give you a quick cheat sheet, and then we'll talk about where this maybe is going. One of the things that really helps when I am triggered is just to go to a friend, to get a little bit of perspective, and to ask two questions. The first is, okay, what do you think is wrong with this feedback that I just got? You know, it's really annoying. This person doesn't know what they're talking about. I don't trust them. I don't like them. I'm going to have a list already of things that are wrong with it, but if you can add to my list, well, then you are definitely welcome at my table with a glass of wine as we talk about what's wrong with the feedback. And I actually need this. How many of you, when a friend comes, walks in the door, complains about this terrible feedback they've just gotten or devastating news and how unfair it is, how many of you say, yeah, this is terrible. They're awful. They're totally wrong. They're crazy. Yeah, great. Is there anybody who doesn't do that? Because I can explain why you don't have friends. Yeah. This is actually really important because, particularly for those of us who are sensitive or devastated, the feedback gets supersized, right? It's like the whole story about who I am is this screw up. or this dropped ball, or this terrible mistake I made which really hurt someone else, right? And so if that's the only thing I can see, I need my friends to help me see the rest of the story. That's not the only bit of information about who I am. So we call this being a supportive mirror. A supportive mirror shows you at your best on a good hair day under flattering light. But when I'm ready, the danger is that your friends stop here. And when you're ready, you actually need someone to help you by shifting to be an honest mirror and ask, all right, what do you think might be right about this feedback? Together, can you help me see something that maybe I can't see by myself? The shape of the honest mirror, the choice is deliberate because where do you typically see this shape of mirror? In a barber shop or hair salon, right? And when your stylist hands it to you, what are they showing you? Something that you can't see by yourself, the back of your head. They're also hoping for appreciation and a tip, by the way, just so you know. But that an honest mirror invites a friend, someone you trust or colleague that you trust to say, okay, what might be right about the feedback? What do you think I need to learn? And that you can unpack that with someone that you like and trust, but who can be honest with you. Dean Goldberg was talking about the Thaddeus R. Beal, and it feels to me fitting that the Thaddeus R. Beal was founded by someone, this is him, by the way, with military experience and who was in litigation and who was born in the midst of World War I and came through Vietnam. That his bequest is specified for the professional development of the ability to have non-litigation, non-fight outcomes. And that lines up quite squarely with the other player in this world for where this work at Harvard comes from, which is Roger Fisher. So Roger fought in World War II. He served in both the Atlantic and the Pacific theaters. And he served as a weatherman. And back then, of course, there were no weather satellites and all of that. So what they would do is that before a raid, they would send up a weather plane accompanied by 2 bombers in order to fly up over Germany or up over Japan and to radio back with weather reports, both just a yes, no, whether the mission should go out, but also readings of airspeed, et cetera, so that they could put the right amount of fuel on board for the folks who needed to make the round trip up and back for the bombing raid. The weatherman typically sat right in the nose, which is where the gunner sat once it was a bombing raid. But the weather plane put the weatherman here because this has the best view and also the ability to measure airspeed, wind speed, et cetera. But it also meant that Roger had a really great view of all of the people below him shooting at him. And that was, I would say, his least favorite part of the job. So, already a negotiator, he thinks to himself, well, the only reason that they're shooting at me is because we are dropping bombs on them. Because as long as they're going to send up 2 planes to accompany me, we're going to put a bomb on board to just use it while we're there. But that's what's causing them to use their anti-aircraft artillery. So he goes back and he says, hey, what if we just send the weather plane alone? And it might take, like oil pricing, a couple of rounds for the message to get through. But pretty quickly, I think, the other side will figure out, oh, it's a single plane, it's just the weather plane. And they'll realize that we've changed our practice and we are not sending bombs along with the weather plane. And both sides, by the way, were using weather planes, so it was a standard practice. And also, both sides were running low on ammunition and fuel. So they say, well, let me run it up the chain. It goes up the chain. The message comes back. Look, it's your skin. If you want to go up without protective bombers, it's up to you, but you got to persuade your colleagues in the cockpit. So he persuades them, and it takes a couple rounds, but pretty quickly, he was flying in the Pacific then, the Japanese figure out, oh, it's just the weather plane. And Roger was feeling really good about this until a couple of months later. This practice is why the Enola Gay, which dropped the bomb in Hiroshima, was sent alone. It was sent to mimic the weather plane. And that day, Roger was given the instruction, fly up over Japan, radio back your information, turn around. They usually would fly out over Korea, turn around, and come back over Japan. So about an hour later, they would pass over Japan again. And that day, they were told, fly over Japan, give us the information, and then go out over Korea and circle home. Don't go back over Japan, because they sent the Enola Gay an hour later. And what the Americans did not know at the time is that not only had the Japanese stopped shooting at the weather plane, they also had stopped hitting the air raid sirens. And that is why the death toll of Hiroshima was as high as it was. It was because everyone was out in plain view. And the Americans didn't realize that that was an unintended effect of this new practice. Roger came home from the war. He had lost all of his college roommates, and that experience, his experience of war, drove him for the rest of his life to find better ways for humans to handle our conflicts with each other. He wrote Getting DS. He founded the Harvard Negotiation Project. With Bruce, he teamed up to create the negotiation workshop and a whole pedagogical philosophy about how to learn from experience. And what do we need to learn as humans to find better ways to handle our conflicts with each other? And at this moment in time, it feels like things are a little dark. I don't know if you're feeling that way, both in the United States and globally. Is this one of those moments where there's something that we need to learn? What is it that as a country we need to learn now? That 30 years from now, people are going to look back and say, yeah, this is what they figured out that changed the course of where things were going. Because sometimes it takes being in the dark to be motivated to find the light. And so as we think about in our democracy right now, we fight over the facts. We fight over what's true. We don't trust anything that comes from the other side. We're trying to figure out who we are. And we're losing sight of who we are around the core values and ideas of the country that most Americans, I think, still agree with. But we don't trust anything the other side has to say because it's become such a zero-sum game. Our hope is that we can continue to contribute to that learning process. And each of you is an important part of that process. The question of how we get from where we are to somewhere better, and what do we need to learn to do so, is the question. Thank you so much for coming, and I am delighted to be on the journey to find those answers together.
Sheila, that was wonderful, of course. We do have one more task ahead of us. There's an object on the stage. I have no idea what it is. But I need your help to the audience.
Shouldn't the negotiation chair be a love seat?
You can call it whatever you want.
Okay, good, excellent.
Shall we?
Wow. Thank you.
Congratulations.
That's amazing.